Hello, soul family. I received an interesting question this morning, and I think that the information would be just generally helpful. The question is surrounding fear and how, even though we know logically, we have the information that tells us that the situation is fine and it's going to be okay. How can we help to release that fear that we may still be carrying, that it isn't going to turn out that way, or and then how do we delineate between, is it fear or is it a gut instinct? So, I didn't write down an outline, I'm just going with it. But when we start to look at a topic that is creating fear in us, I think the first most important place for us to start is to monitor how we're talking to ourselves. Are we feeding ourselves more fear-based language? Or are we trying to tell ourselves it's going to be okay, everything is working out in my highest good? When we start talking to ourselves in a positive way, something to be mindful of there is, am I putting it in the future or am I bringing it into the now? Everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to work out. If you just took the going to is, everything is always working out for me. Everything is okay in my life. I am safe. I am strong. I am able to manage anything that comes to me with love and compassion. Whatever the language is for you, just be mindful of how you're talking to yourself about it. That's kind of the first level, in my opinion, of self-care. Also considering the language that you're using with yourself. Is it something that you would say to a friend who's come to you in this time of need and support? Is it something that you would say to a child? If it is not, you do not say it to yourself. If it isn't something that you would want to hear a friend say to you to support you and love you, why in the world are you saying it to yourself? We are so good at doing that. We're just good at being the hardest on ourselves, and we all know that. What's that phrase? We're all our own worst critics. Yeah, we are. And then we wonder why we're limiting ourselves or holding ourselves back or continuing to run belief systems and working to let them go. But at the same time, we turn around and we chastise ourselves for not being able to let that go. Oh, that happened so long ago. Why haven't I let that go yet? Or gosh, there's been so many layers to that thing, and I've just worked on it. I've gone to therapy for years on that. Why can't I just seem to let that go? Would you say that to a friend? And if you would say that to the friend, how do you think that makes that friend feel? Oh, probably not so great. Probably not very supported. Probably not very seen, because that's your own baggage. So, a couple of tips to help ease some of that is asking yourself, you can come up with all of these phrases. I am safe, good things are coming to me now, everything is always working out for me, I am safe. That one just keeps coming into my head. So that was then, this is now. That one's also really powerful. I use that one a lot. That was then, this is now, because it brings you into now and gets you out of the past. A lot of the time we tend to ruminate over these past situations. That brings up the fear because our brain doesn't know if it's happening in the past, if it's just something we made up in our mind, if it's currently happening in front of us, if it's something that we're worrying about in the future. All our brain knows is that your nervous system has now been turned on and activated, and we're going to die, or this threat is currently happening to us. It doesn't delineate between whether it's then or now or made up. So taking the time to soothe ourselves, because if we're worried about manifesting, or if we're worried about creating something in our life that we don't want to see, because we know we're being fearful, because we know we can't get over this thing that we're scared about, even though that may have had an okay outcome, there's still fear around it. So then we add another layer of like spiritual guilt to it, like, oh my gosh, no, I'm worried about this and I'm going to end up manifesting it. Even though the situation worked out, I'm going to end up manifesting it because I can't stop thinking about it. Slow down the train. It's okay. All you have to do is start small. Start small with language to yourself, giving yourself comforting words, asking yourself what you want to hear, what you need to hear, paying attention to how your body feels when you say these phrases, because if it creates a little tension in your gut, or if it's hard to physically say, or if it really just helps your shoulders like let go, or after you say it, your body spontaneously takes a deep breath. All of those things are releases and letting goes. All of those things are your nervous system easing ever so slightly. Take note of those phrases, because those phrases created a sensation in your body of ease. Take note of the phrases that create, a drawing up of your shoulders, a rolling in. Whatever sensation is not as comforting, we'll use that word, is not as comforting, is not the phrase that's in alignment. You're basically sort of like pinging back and forth. I always see like a radar thing. You're basically pinging back and forth, test driving all of these different phrases, and some feel energetically right, some feel like you're lying to yourself, some will come in, and as you get closer and closer and closer to your alignment, you'll find the one that feels the best. But your bodily responses are your system of guidance to finding that trail, to finding those little fireflies. So you do have to listen. You do got to tune in with your body, because that's where the language of vibration speaks. We hear intuition. We feel intuition. That's what that gut response is. What is that? Gut response. That's your body. That's your body responding. If we know what a gut response is, which we all understand that phrase, we've heard that phrase, we've been raised with that phrase, you go with your gut response. But what about your heart? Your heart has responses. What about your shoulders? What about your back? What about that ping over here? Every time you get around that one person, you always get this crick in your back or this crick in your neck, and then it develops into a headache. Sorry, my computer's trying to restart itself. Distracted. So listening to what your body says when you're test driving these phrases. Another layer that you could add to this is mirror work. Doing and saying these things in front of a mirror. Now, this can be very powerful work, and it can also be very activating work. There's one thing about talking to yourself and finding a phrase that feels comfortable while you're, doing the dishes or folding a basket of laundry or driving in your car. There's another layer of when you're physically looking at yourself. That's why I love doing these videos, because I get to physically look at myself. So these messages are as much as for you as they are for me. Or I should have said that the other way around. But anyways, so adding a layer of mirror work to this can make these even more of an impact for you. Recording yourself on your phone, just talking to yourself like you would talk to your child or like you would talk to a friend, and then going back and listening to that creates a very different level of compassion for yourself than just talking to yourself as you're driving, because now you get to see yourself. You're watching the change of expression on your face. You're hearing yourself give yourself those words. You can play that anytime you need. Another layer that you can add to this, with or without mirror work, is body language. When you get into, the fear spiral, the shame spiral, whatever the thing is that's eating at you, and you're going to call on your language changes. You're going to call on comforting phrases that you have narrowed down over time that really create a sensation of relief in your body. take note of what your body is doing. Not just sensationally, but physically. Are you getting kind of little? Are you kind of shrinking? Because we might be dealing with a younger self thing here. It's triggered by whatever this thing is that's showing up, but now we're getting little. Are you developing in a more aggressive stance? Is your face really crinkly? Are you leaning forward? Are you pushing your jaw out? Are you trying to make yourself bigger? Those things are really interesting because those body postures release different chemicals in the body. It's like shrinking, if you think about that, and the fight, flight, freeze response, especially if you shrink and you feel like you can't move, we're probably somewhere in between wanting to run and potentially freezing. If we're becoming really big and aggressive, we're ready to fight. Like that's what's engaged in our system chemically and primally. So if we take that information of what's happening to us in a bodily way, posture-wise, and we start mindfully putting ourselves into power poses that are not necessarily aggressive or they're not necessarily, demure. For instance, the Wonder Woman pose. You can't see me right now. I can stand up. Hands on hips. Hands on hips. Feet shoulder width apart. Just standing in that pose for 2 minutes periodically throughout your day, or even just once a day if that's all you want to do, completely changes your ability to manage stress from a chemical sense in your body. I'm going to post this really interesting TED Talk that I listened to on body language, and she speaks about this, and at the moment I just cannot remember her name. This is not my information. This is just beautiful information I've absorbed over time, integrated into my self-care system, and then also integrated into the care systems I like to help build with people. But that Wonder Woman pose, specifically for me, I found myself doing it my whole life, but then I've also found myself doing the more demure poses as well. And now I've gotten to the point where when I catch myself becoming that shrinking violet, it's usually because I am modeling behavior that's around me. Whoop, time to put shields up, time to bring your aura in a little bit tighter, Amanda, because you're picking up on other people's stuff. Or the opposite of that is I am posturing against a person who may be standing in a very aggressive way or a very large body language posture of some kind. Standing with your fingers on the edge of a table and slightly leaning forward is a power pose. Wonder Woman hands on hips, power pose. Leaning back in your chair, putting your feet up, putting your arms kind of behind. That's another power pose. All of these are things you could do at your desk. You could do them on your elevator flight. You could do them in your bedroom before you leave your house. You can integrate them all over the place, and they will help you to manage stress better. So I am hopeful that this information is layered in a way that is clear. I feel like I probably should have written this down so that I could flow a little bit more clearly, but I am working on getting into doing more videos because I have a phenomenal amount of information inside of my head. And I have come to different points in my life where I reach what I feel like is like critical mass on knowledge. And this was what happened to me about 2 years ago. And I just have to share this information because I know that it makes a huge difference in people's lives. All the people that I've worked with and talked to and just had general conversations with, this shit changes, this stuff changes lives. I've watched it do it in my own. I've watched it do it in friends and family. And 2 years ago, the information came out sort of like a fire hose. Like, that's how I see it. It was like, it was just information. I want to share. And I went through a few months of fire hose phase. And then I came back in. And I've spent the last 2 years journeying with information gathering again. I feel a lot like I'm a perpetual student in my life because I just love gobbling up information. But then at the same time, I know I'm very much a teacher because I love teaching. But now I've reached this point where I feel like I'm approaching critical mass on information again. It's time to bring it all forward and share it. But this time I feel like I have to create a platform. So I am personally working towards learning to create a platform so that I can present this information in a more linear fashion so that people can build with it instead of just dumping a bunch of information on somebody and being like, all right, sift through it. There's super awesome stuff in there. So that's my bit. But if you have any questions, I would love engagement on this. How does this work for you? Tell us how it works. How does it feel? But again, if you wouldn't say it to a kid or a friend, don't say it to yourself. Start with self-language. Start reflecting on it, because that will absolutely feed the fear. And that's what we're working on, is kind of easing some of that chatter in our mind that really gets us lit up. So how are you talking to yourself? Once you begin changing your self-talk, which phrases feel the best? Take note. After you start working with those phrases and you're finding comfort in those phrases, consider layering it with mirror work or recording and listening to yourself, talking to yourself in video form. If that is comfortable for you or uncomfortable, just keep working into it. This is not the easiest work you will ever do. I may make these recommendations to you, and you try 2 or 3 things, and you're like, holy shit, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to do this. I can't do this, and you walk away. Don't beat yourself up for that. Maybe it's not the right time to integrate that information in. But the first place that it all is going to start, no matter where you start, is self-care. So maybe talking to yourself isn't the first place to start for you. Maybe it's doing little things for yourself. Whatever self-care is for you, all of this work begins with care of self. Because if you're worried about what you're manifesting, if you're worried about law of attraction getting a hold of a vibration and making something a reality that you don't want, the only thing you can do is tend your vibration, because the universe speaks in vibrational tones. So, how are you caring for yourself? I wish you all well. I hope this information is helpful. I'm proud of myself for being vulnerable and making this video. You're awesome, Amanda. I love you. And I love all of you guys. Thank you for taking the time. And thank you for your support and your kind words and your encouragement. And for everybody who's worked with me over these years and my growth and expansion and change, thank you. For each one of you that I reach out to in my time of total chaos and expansion meltdown mode, thank you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for supporting me and loving me through that. Peace.